Hey there, and welcome to the Crochet Gift Set mini-series. Together, you and I will finish an entire gift set that's perfect for just about anyone on your list. In total, we'll invest less than 8 hours into crafting the perfect handmade gift for a special someone. In the third and final part of the Crochet Gift Set mini-series, we'll work through a pair of wrist warmers together. Before we get started with the tutorial, you'll need the written instructions as well. Now you can find the written instructions linked in this video description and on your screen, or you can type in bhookedcrochet.com/colorscape-wrist in your browser. All right, let's get to it. We'll begin our wrist warmers by making a slip knot. And we have two sizes here. We have a small medium and a large extra large. I'll be working on the small medium size, and so I will chain 23. For the large and extra large size, you'll chain 25. Now once you have your 23 or 25 chains, we're ready to start on the first row. We're going to work with rows first, kind of like we did for the cowl, if you've worked on that pattern as well, and then we'll convert it to a round later. So we have our first chain from the hook and our second chain. I want to focus my attention on that second one, but again, I like to work in that back bump of the chain, so I'll flip it over and make a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. And the first round here, or the first row rather, is really quite simple. We're just going to make one single crochet into every single chain. Now once we've completed that, we're ready to join to convert this into a round. So I'll just flip my work, so I'm looking at the back side here, make sure it's not twisted, and fold it over so that I can see my first stitch there. I'll join with the slip stitch to the back loop of my first single crochet, and again, make sure you grab your working yarn and not your tail to join here. Now like before, we have a little gap here at the bottom, and we can use our tail to close that up. All right, now we're ready to start on round 2, and actually rounds 2 and 3 are the same. So for these 2 rounds, we'll chain 1 to start it off, which won't count as a stitch, and then we'll find the same place where we made our join, and we'll single crochet in that back loop. And from there, it's all single crochets again. We'll just single crochet into the back loop of the next stitch, and just repeat that around. And when you make it to the end of your round, you'll join with a slip stitch to your first single crochet, but just catch that back loop only. Now go ahead and repeat that one more time for round 3. This time, when you make it to the end of round 3, when you join with a slip stitch, go ahead and catch both loops of that first single crochet. We're going to transition now to a clustered stitch pattern, and we don't have to work in the back loop only anymore. So before we move on, go ahead and do a quick count. If you're doing the small or medium size, you'll need to have 22 stitches, and if you're working on the large or extra large, you'll have 24 stitches. All right, so to start off on round 4, we'll chain 1, which doesn't count as a stitch, and I'll half double crochet in the same place. And here's where the repeat begins. I'll chain 1, I'll skip 1 stitch, and work a clustered stitch in the next. So to do that clustered stitch, yarn over, insert your hook in the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, then yarn over again, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on your hook. And the repeat begins. Chain 1, skip 1, cluster. Go ahead and repeat that around. And when you get to the end of your round, you'll make your cluster in your second to last stitch. I'll chain one, I have one to skip, and then I can join with a slip stitch to my first half double crochet. All right, so starting off on round 5, we'll chain one, which doesn't count as a stitch. I'll single crochet in the same place, and then I'll single crochet in that chain one space, and single crochet in my cluster stitch. I'm catching both loops, by the way, as I work these single crochets, and that's the repeat. I've got my chain one next, so I'll work a single crochet there, work a single crochet in the cluster. We'll repeat that until we get to the end of the round. When you get to the end, don't forget your last stitch is a chain one, so I'll make a single crochet there, and then I can join with a slip stitch to my first single crochet, catching both loops. And there we have it. The clustered stitch pattern consists of round 4 and round 5, so our clustered row and our single crochet row. And we need to repeat that a little bit more before we add the thumb. So for those of you who are working on the small medium, we'll repeat rounds 4 and 5 a total of 3 more times. Now if you're working on the large or extra large size, you'll work rows 4 and 5 a total of 4 more times. So once you have that repeat completed, it should look something like this. So I'll have a total of 4 of my clustered rounds for the small medium. You'll have 5 if you're working on the large or extra large. The next thing we'll tackle is the thumb round. Now you'll need to refer to your written instructions. I'll demonstrate using the right hand. The stitch count is just slightly different. You're basically doing the opposite for the left hand wrist warmer. You'll also find that there is a slight difference from the small medium to the large extra large size. So once again, just go ahead and pull up your written instructions to make sure that you're doing it right. I'll demonstrate the technique here. Okay, so this is a clustered round. So we're going to chain one, which won't count as a stitch. I'll half double crochet in the next one. I'll chain one, I'll skip a stitch, cluster in the next. So after you finish that first cluster, you're going to add 7 more if you're working on the small medium, and you'll add 8 more if you're working on the large or extra large for the right-handed mitt. So that brings me to where I am now, and I'm ready to add the thumb. So for the thumb, I'm going to chain 4, and then I'll skip 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3, and then I will cluster in the next. And then I'll chain 1, I'll skip the last stitch, I'll join with a slip stitch to my half double crochet. Now just keep in mind that when you're working the left-handed wrist warmer, we're just going to do that in reverse. So we'll start off with 1 cluster, then we'll chain 4, skip 3, and then we'll work our clusters until we get to the end of the round. And then I have to throw in a little side note here for my left-handed crocheters. Of course, you're used to working in mirror images. So what will be flipped for you is that when you work the right-handed mitt, it will actually end up being the left. And when you work the left, it'll end up being the right. All right, so we'll continue with the next round by chaining 1, which won't count as a stitch. I'll single crochet in my first stitch there, and continue on just as I have been with 1 single crochet in the chain space and 1 single crochet in the cluster until I get to that thumb gap. When you make it to your chain 4 or your chain 5 space, depending on which size you're working on, we'll make 3 single crochets in that space. And then we'll continue on as before. Our next stitch is a cluster, so I'll make a single crochet in my cluster and a single crochet in my chain 1 space. And this time, when you join with a slip stitch to your first single crochet, just catch that back loop only. We'll transition now to work our final 2 rounds, which is a repeat of round 3. So I'll chain 1, I'll single crochet in the back loop of that same stitch, and then make 1 single crochet in the back loop of every stitch. And don't forget at the end of this round, when you join with a slip stitch, just do so to that back loop only. Now repeat that 1 more time. Now at the end of my final round, I'll join with a slip stitch to my first single crochet, but I'll catch 2 loops since this is my last one, and then I can fasten off.